This is Kent Hovind. I wanted to go through his whole seminar series. It's a young Earth creationist thing where he proves the Earth is 6,000 years old and evolution is a hoax and all this other stuff. We're on number 6, the Hovind theory, where he's explaining his understanding of the world. This isn't the first one. If you didn't see the others, don't sweat it. This stands independently of the rest. I'll give context if it's missing. But let's give this a listen, see what he says here.
That's why this Pangea theory is so important to them, because they can say, oh, it's being recycled. They'll say the ocean floor doesn't have much mud because it gets pulled under and remelted and comes up again in the middle. So it's being recycled. Well, that may be, but there's another reason. It may be there's not much mud down there because it's not millions of years old. Plates are moving. There's not much question about that. But that doesn't prove they've always been moving, and it doesn't prove the rate has always been the same as we see today.
Oh,
I think students should be told.
Yeah, right. He's arguing the Earth is 6,000 years old. All right. This is his argument effectively. The Earth was created last Thursday, and it just looks like it's existed for millions of years. But it's really only existed for, a week. This argument is piss poor. Like, I'm sorry, it takes faith to believe this. And he may even admit that to you. Yes, I know it takes faith, but I'm a Jesus believer or whatever, and that means by necessity that I must believe that the Earth is only 6,000 years old. It's absurd.
There are other options than what they're being taught in school. Now, I live right by Interstate 10 in Pensacola, Florida. Interstate 10 runs all the way from Los Angeles to Jacksonville, Florida.
He may have at the time, but then not long after this, he spent the following 10 years in federal prison for tax evasion, so.
If I see somebody headed east on Interstate 10 at 70 miles an hour, does that prove they started in Los Angeles 4 days ago? No, they might have just got on at the last exit, right? And just because we see these continents moving a little bit today does not prove anything long-term historically. Don't fall for that propaganda. The continental drift theory is designed to avoid two problems for the evolutionist. One, the magnetic field's getting weaker. Number two, there's very little sediment in the ocean.
Hang on, sorry. In the ocean, which proves evolution is false. All right. The magnetic field is getting weaker? That's technically true, but the magnetic field gets weaker and stronger all the time. It has variations in strength. Because it's an electromagnet, it doesn't just go down and that's it. It doesn't just flip and then that's it or whatever. An electromagnet can change power, strength, He's framing it like it's a bar magnet. I talked about this in the previous one. It's not a bar magnet. It's an electromagnet. The more electricity you feed into it, or the more conditions are different in one way or another, the stronger or weaker it's going to be. So, and regarding this other thing, he says, if the Earth were billions of years old, there should be way more sediment on the ocean floor than we observe. He typically claims we should have miles and miles of sediment everywhere, but we don't. Therefore, young Earth. This argument completely misunderstands plate tectonics and sea floor recycling. The ocean floor isn't static. It's constantly being created at mid-ocean ridges and destroyed at subduction zones. Near mid-ocean ridges, where new oceanic crust forms, sediments are thinner because they've had less time to accumulate on younger crusts. The oldest ocean floor is only about 200 million years old, not billions. This is Geology 101. And sediment distribution matches plate tectonics perfectly. Sediment thickness increases predictably with distance from mid-ocean ridges, gaining approximately 100 to 200 meters of sediment for every 1,000-kilometer distance from the ridge axis. So this is just a flat-out bald-faced lie. He does this a lot.
And another explanation for that might be that the Bible is right and the Earth is not billions of years old. People say, where does the Ice Age fit into the Bible?
It's like we see direct, hard evidence that Kent Hovind's understanding of the world, that it was created last Thursday, is incorrect. And he says, well, God wanted you to see that evidence to confuse you. Or no, Satan wanted you to see that. Satan wants to confuse you with that evidence. We see direct evidence against it. And then when we see evidence that could potentially, maybe, I suppose, a little be interpreted as pushing people toward this, he's like, see, evidence. It's absurd. Seriously, just such a disgusting joke, dude.
There certainly was an ice age. There's not much question. Ice came all the way down to Kansas City, Missouri. How many of you are from Ohio or Indiana or Michigan or Minnesota or one of these states that are covered by ice? They used to be covered by ice, okay? Actually, this time of year, they're still covered by ice. But there's all kinds of evidence around those states that you can prove there really was an ice age. When ice pushes out, it piles up a pile of rocks in front of it. When the rocks are left there, when the ice melts back, it's called a terminal moraine. If it pushes the rocks to the side, it's called a lateral moraine. When the ice melts back, it leaves behind lakes called kettle lakes. Minnesota, the land of 10,000 lakes, is full of kettle lakes. As the ice melts back, the ground actually lifts up because the weight is gone. The ground may lift up quite a ways. That's called isostatic rebound. There is no question those things actually happen. The question for the Christian is, where does this fit into the Bible?
I'm just trying to figure out what his claim is here. Let's just step back just the slightest bit and try one more time.
When ice pushes out, it piles up a pile of rocks in front of it. When the rocks are left there, when the ice melts back, it's called a terminal moraine. If it pushes the rocks to the side, it's called a lateral moraine. When the ice melts back, it leaves behind lakes called kettle lakes. Minnesota, the land of 10,000 lakes, is full of kettle lakes. As the ice melts back, the ground actually lifts up because the weight is gone. The ground may lift up quite a ways.
Right. So he's affirming an ice age now.
That's called isostatic rebound. There is no question those things actually happen. The question for the Christian is, where does this fit into the Bible?
Okay, interesting. Proof of an ice age. Like, indisputable proof.
And what froze the mammoths? Some of the big, hairy, hippie elephants that are found frozen standing up, food still in their teeth. What happened to the mammoths? One year, it was reported that 20,000 mammoth tusks were extracted from the ground. Just 1 year. 20,000 tusks. Estimates are that 5 million mammoths perished in one catastrophe. These
slurp much?
Red dots indicate where frozen mammoths have been found. The yellow dots indicate where frozen rhinoceros have been found. What happened to the mammoths? Well, some of the mammoths are frozen in the upright position. Their undigested food in their stomach and mouth is an interesting situation.
I've learned that I need to validate literally every single thing he says. This is just a lie. This one was a lie. Yeah, this is a lie. There was no undigested food found in their stomachs. There was no food found in mammoth mouths. The quick freeze narrative is false. The mammoth showed signs of decomposition and had been partially scavenged. It wasn't flash frozen like something out of a cartoon. The preservation was due to being buried in permafrost relatively quickly, days to weeks, not instantly. So this is just a lie, of course. Why am I surprised?
They died of suffocation. There's no water found in the lungs. The small ice crystals in the blood indicate they probably froze in less than 5 hours.
That's a lie.
That requires something less than 300 below zero. Now, it never gets 300 below zero on Earth. The coldest temperature ever recorded from National Geographic is minus 127 degrees.
He does that joke all the time. Calls it National Geographic, because he doesn't want people reading it. He wants people to think that National Geographic is evil. It's seriously depraved. Aside from that, the flash freeze thing is a lie. He made up a claim about how the scientific community views the world and then debunked it. Like, I know the word for this is straw man, but I really feel like it goes a bit beyond straw man.
That's pretty chilly. But that's not cold enough to freeze the mammoths. What happened to freeze the mammoths? In 1999, I was preaching in Alaska, and I took the little tour to go out on a boat to see the Portage Glacier. And I'm standing next to this guy on the boat. I got talking to him, trying to witness to him. I said, "What do you do for a living?" He said, "Well, I drill for oil in Barrow, Alaska, near Barrow, Alaska." I said, "Well, when you drill down, do you find anything interesting down there?" He said, "You wouldn't believe the stuff we drill into down there." He said, "Just a few months ago, we were drilling down. We drilled through 1,000 feet of permanently frozen ground called permafrost, and we started bringing up pieces of wood. And we always take whatever comes out of the well and lay it out on the ground so we can get a core sample of what we're drilling through to know the formation." He said, "We drilled straight through a tree that was standing up. The tree was 300 feet tall, standing up."
I doubt it. I'm sorry. I don't believe that. Trees actually have an upper size limit in the world. And here's the reason. It's fascinating. You know how a hydraulic press works? Here's how a hydraulic press works. There's a property of science that's absolutely fascinating where if you have a tube that's 1 inch wide, a 1 inch wide tube, and it's 10 feet tall. I know that I'm keeping it short because my camera is not 10 feet tall, but 10 feet tall and 1 inch wide. And you put water into it. At the bottom, the water pressure is going to be the same as if the tube was a foot wide and 10 feet tall. It doesn't matter how much water is there. What matters is how much water is above you, basically. So a hydraulic press works by getting a very thin tube that's very, very tall and pressing down on the water, and it creates a multiplied water pressure value. Another way to look at this is you need just as much force to push 10 feet of water up a tube, whether that water is in a 1 inch tube or a 1 foot tube. So here's how it relates back to trees. There is an upper limit for how tall trees can get because their veins that carry water to the rest of the tree at the top can't carry the water beyond a certain height. It's literally impossible. There is an upper limit for how tall trees can be. I'm not sure what the upper limit is. Let me see. 400 to 426 feet is the upper limit, apparently, and we're already pretty close to it. So I guess I could see a 300-foot tree, but it's extremely rare that you find a tree that large.
Standing up. The tree was 300 feet tall, standing up under 1,000 feet of permanently frozen ground. Well, I preached in Barrow, Alaska a couple years ago. There is only one tree in Barrow, Alaska, and it is about this tall in a Chinese restaurant, and they struggle to keep it alive.
Okay.
Because they don't get much sun up there for months at a time. There are no trees outside in Barrow, Alaska. There are certainly no trees 300 feet tall. There are very few trees in the world that are 300 feet tall.
There are some, like I said. We are reaching the upper limit of 400.
How do you get a tree 300 feet tall, standing up under 1,000 feet of permanently frozen ground?
I don't understand what the confusion is. What's confusing about this?
What happened? I'm going to give you what I call the Hovind theory of what caused all these phenomena, but I need to review a little science for you. Many people have been influential in developing this in my brain anyway. I appreciate Walt Brown and Henry Morris and Baumgartner and some of these guys that have done work, and the biblical flood and the ice epic had a great influence on me. But ultimately, I have to take the blame for this if it's wrong. I'm going to teach you a few things about science and then give you the Hovind theory. The inverse square law tells us if two objects are attracted to each other, like the Earth and the Moon, the force of attraction is inversely proportional to the square of the distance between them.
That's correct. The inverse square law does exist. I did a bunch of research into this forever ago. But it's a moving figure. But okay, let's keep going.
In English, that means if you half the distance, or if you brought the moon into 1/3 the distance, you take the 1/3, flip it over, and square it. It's now 9 times the gravitational pull. Inverse square laws apply when you're dealing with forces involving gravity, light, magnetism, and girls.
Oh, he's so funny.
I travel every single week. I believe I've been home 8 Sundays in 14 years. I flew 215 times last year, was gone 210 days away from home. So I get to come home every week. When I get a certain distance from my wife, it's, hello, dear, how are you doing? When you half the distance, it is 4 times the attraction, not 2. 4 times the attraction. When you half the distance again, it is too late.
Okay. So I did not need that close-up of lips. Thank you, sir.
It is too late. So guys, the secret is stay about 10 feet away and you won't have a problem, okay? Now, the inverse square law is one thing to learn. The second thing you need to learn is a spinning top, any spinning object, behaves in a peculiar way if it is struck by something.
Wait, what was all that?
If you throw a rock at a spinning top, it'll wobble.
I'm sorry. Wait, what was all that about trees? Why did he say there's a 300-foot tree? I don't understand. Who cares? What was the hang-up? What was he trying to prove with that?
If you throw a rock at a spinning top, it'll wobble around for a while, or you can do it with a gyroscope. And it'll wobble around, and then it'll recover, spinning smoothly, usually at some new crazy angle. You can actually determine when it was struck if you could see a graph of the wavy line of how it behaved as it was wobbling. Interesting. The Earth has no doubt wobbled through the years. The North Pole has moved around. Today, the Earth is tilted over 23.5 degrees, which is why they always mount the globe on that 23.5 degree angle. Stonehenge is an interesting stone building. Apparently, it was built to worship the sun at summer solstice.
I don't believe that. I'm sorry. I have to check every word out of his mouth. Okay, that's real, apparently. Monument famously aligned so the summer solstice sun rises directly over the heel stone, and its rays shine into the corner. All right, that one was real. Go on.
But today, Stonehenge does not line up. The temple Amun-Ra was also apparently built to worship the sun at summer solstice, the longest day of the year, but it doesn't line up. Edixus, same thing.
Okay, let's find out. Edixus? Okay, I don't know that one. He's probably talking about the temple of Ramses II in Egypt, not Amun-Ra. He's talking about Abu Simbel, apparently. But it was dedicated to various gods, including Ra, and possibly Karnak, or another Egyptian temple complex. Abu Simbel does line up twice a year, around February 22nd and October 22nd. Sunlight penetrates the entire length of the temple and illuminates the statues in the inner sanctuary. This is called the Sun Festival. So this is just a lie, then. This is just a lie. Why the dates shifted? The temple was physically relocated in the 1960s to save it from being flooded by Lake Nasser. Are you serious? Are you fucking kidding me right now? Really? Is this real? So he says Stonehenge lines up with the sun. Like, you can see that it does line up at the summer solstice. And he named another one incorrectly and said this one doesn't line up. That's because it was moved, obviously. He must have known that. If he was aware of this argument, he must have known that, right?
The Earth is tilted over today, and that's what causes the seasons. Usually on June 21st, occasionally on June 20th, but usually June 21st, it's the longest day of the year because the Earth is tilted, in our case with the northern hemisphere, we're tilted toward the sun. So we get more sunlight, and the North Pole gets pure sunlight all the time, 24 hours.
Well, at least we can say he's not a flat earther. There's that. He's just as bad as a flat earther, though, seriously. Just a reminder, I would really appreciate it if you guys checked out my Patreon. If you're not going to donate, you don't have to, but follow me there at the very least. owenmorgan.com/Patreon. Just in case something happens with the government or whatever. It would be really good if you had some way to connect with me and my content. I'm really concerned about that. And maybe you should consider that for other creators too.
George Dodwell, the famous Australian astronomer, did a lot of study of the shadows, of the solstice shadows recorded by ancient astronomers. He said, it looks to me like something struck the Earth. When he followed the wavy line made of the solstice shadows, he said something struck the Earth about 4,350 years ago and caused the Earth to wobble for several thousand years. Today, the Earth is pretty stable. The Earth's North Pole doesn't move around very much. But could it be that something actually struck planet Earth about the time of Noah's flood? Well, that's what the scientific evidence points toward.
No, it doesn't point to that. That something struck the Earth around the time of Noah's flood. And what was it he said hold on, one more time.
Go and caused the Earth to wobble.
Australian astronomer did a study of solstice shadow. Oh, I see. Okay, I understand. Right. So Stonehenge and Amun-Ra, which is not the name of it, apparently it's Abu Simbel, but it did act as a temple to the god Ra. Anyway, the reason those don't line up, again, is because one of them was moved to a different fucking location. Obviously, it wouldn't line up. Wow, okay, so where does the inverse square law come into this equation? I don't understand. Why are you even talking about all of this? What does this have to do with literally anything? Okay, this is George Dodwell's hypothesis about Earth's axial tilt changing over time. George Dodwell, 1879 to 1963, was a real Australian astronomer, apparently. But this particular work was never peer-reviewed or published in scientific journals. It was a personal hypothesis he developed late in life that the mainstream astronomical community did not accept. Here are the fatal flaws. The ancient measurements aren't reliable enough. The precision Dodwell claims from ancient astronomical records, Exodus, Egyptian temples, etc., simply doesn't exist in the historical record. It does not exist. Bottom line. Ancient measurements of the obliquity, or the axial tilt, had significant error margins. Number 2, we can measure Earth's axial tilt changes precisely. Modern astronomy shows Earth's axial tilt changes very slowly and predictably through a process called axial precession. It varies between 22.1 degrees and 24.5 degrees over a 41,000 year cycle. We're currently at about 23.44 degrees, and it's decreasing by about 0.013 degrees per century. No sudden impact needed. And number 3, the struck by an object claim is absurd. If something hit Earth hard enough to change its axial tilt noticeably 4,300 years ago, it would have caused mass extinctions, global catastrophic effects, geological evidence we absolutely do not see. This would have wiped out civilization that we know are thriving at the... This would have wiped out civilizations that we know were thriving at the time. Egyptian Old Kingdom, Mesopotamian cities, Indus Valley, so on and so forth. So this is complete bullshit. And again, I'm still not seeing where the inverse square law comes in. What are you talking about? Why did he even bring that up? It's like he keeps bringing up shit that's completely irrelevant. He brought up that 300-foot tall tree. So, okay, there's a tall tree. Then he brought up the inverse square law. All right.
350 years ago and caused the Earth to wobble for several thousand years. Today, the Earth is pretty stable. The Earth's North Pole doesn't move around very much. But could it be that something actually struck planet Earth about the time of Noah's flood? Now, that's what the scientific evidence points toward. Interesting. Today, the Earth is tilted.
It does not point toward that. It points directly away from that. He's talking about a conspiracy theory that's 100 years old. All right, let me be fair. It wasn't a conspiracy theory. It was a hypothesis that a legitimate scientist had 100 years ago that he never told anybody else. That was never peer-reviewed, that was never analyzed and dissected in a scientific way. And it's over 100 years now, I think. And we understand this stuff, like, flawlessly. We don't need this hypothesis from some random guy.
Over, and that's what causes the seasons. The first mention of cold weather in the Bible is in Genesis chapter 8, after the flood. I doubt they had huge polar ice caps.
Well, I mean, that's because the flood was mentioned really early in the Bible, right? The flood was mentioned, like, within the first 2 chapters of the book, or of the Bible. So, yeah, obviously we wouldn't have mention of cold because we have mention of basically nothing before that point.
Before the flood came. I flew up as far as we could fly in Canada and then drove 2 hours north of that, way up into central Saskatchewan. We were only right about here. There's a whole lot of earth above us, but they said this is about the limit of habitable land where you can actually do farming, because north of here, the seasons are too harsh. You can't do any farming. There is a huge chunk of planet Earth, north and south, near the poles, that is simply unusable for farmland. Now, the Bible says God formed the world to be inhabited. I don't think what we have today is anything similar to what Adam and Eve saw. Next
Okay, again, fine, I don't understand.
thing you need to keep in mind, the moon has craters on it, but we never see the moon get struck by anything. Where did these craters come from on the moon?
Bro, are you kidding me right now? Really? This is painfully fucking stupid. He says we never see the moon get struck with anything. Where did the craters come from? He has to ask this question, of course, because he thinks that we're only like 4,300 years old. And we've been here recording for like a good portion of that time, right? At least half of it. We've been recording star charts and shit like that. So why hasn't anybody ever recorded the moon being hit by meteors? Okay, wow.
Even Mercury has craters on it. Where did these craters come from?
Does he believe in Mercury?
Mars has a canyon much larger than Grand Canyon. When the scientists studied this canyon on Mars, they said, wow, this canyon formed in a matter of weeks.
I don't know about that. The canyon on Mars formed in a matter of weeks. Let's see if I can find info on that. No, that's not true at all. The Valles Marineris, the massive canyon system on Mars, is about 2,500 miles long, up to 7 miles deep, and 120 miles wide in places. Did not form in weeks. Again, he's building a straw man and claiming that scientists are saying this when nobody is saying this. Literally not one human being is saying this. If a canyon that size formed in weeks, it would require catastrophic energy release that would destroy the planet completely. There is no evidence of the massive debris field that would create such an event. Violation of basic physics regarding erosion rates and material strength. It's just absurd. I can't believe that he would even say that.
A canyon much larger than Grand Canyon. When the scientists studied this canyon on Mars, they said, wow, this canyon formed in a matter of weeks.
Nobody said that.
Because they say there was melting water in one of the craters. It overflowed the rim and washed out this canyon very, very quickly.
Nope.
Well, duh.
Hold on. Here we go. He gave us something of a source here. Scientists apparently are MSNBC. I guess MSNBC is who he's referring to here. Okay, there is apparently a June 2002 study on this. Here's what it actually found. One specific valley, like Aris Vallis or similar, or a similar outflow channel, may have been carved relatively quickly by catastrophic flooding from a breached lake. It was not Vallis Marineris, the largest one. This research was about outflow channels, not the main Vallis Marineris canyon system. They are different geological features. Instant is misleading. Even catastrophic flooding would take months to years to carve these features, not weeks. And this happened 3.5 billion years ago, not recently. The lake itself took millions of years to form. The catastrophic release was just the final event. The crater, the water accumulation, and the geological setup all required vast amounts of time. This doesn't support young Earth creationism anyway, so I'm not sure what he's even talking about.
How can they see a canyon on Mars where we can't find any water for sure and say this thing formed quickly? And you can look at Grand Canyon on planet Earth and can't conclude that water formed that canyon very quickly.
Again, he's manipulating the word quickly here.
I don't understand the stupidity involved here. Looks to me like you ought to be able to see that. As a ridge at the edge of the crater gave way and this canyon formed in a matter of months, certainly less than a year, said one of the scientists. Next thing to keep in mind, it's called the Meissner effect. How many have ever seen two magnets? You put them together and the one will float on top of the other one. You know what I'm talking about here? It's called the Meissner effect. That's how the Japanese trains go. We rode on one of those trains when I was in Japan. Man, they go flying down the tracks.
Yeah, and for some stupid fucking reason, we don't have a good train system here in the United States. You know why that is, right? Because of lobbyists that are trying to keep the airline industry afloat. Trains are more efficient, they're more comfortable, they're cheaper, they're better in literally every single way. They use an existing power grid, which means that we can power them with clean energy, with nuclear power or whatever, which is renewable and significantly cleaner than gas and coal. Instead, we're using airplanes to fly everywhere, which is destroying the environment to a degree I cannot articulate because of lobbying. Anyway, I'm sorry to get off on a soapbox, but it's so fucking stupid, dude.
With magnetic levitation. No resistance that way, no friction. Next thing to keep in mind, there are comets flying around through space, and these comets are extremely cold. 300 to 400 below 0 Fahrenheit.
This guy, I swear to God, he's jumping all over the place, okay? What was your point about the trains? Are you going to, stick to a single subject?
Don't lick it. I need to find out if any of you are or were as dumb as I was as a kid. How many of you have a piece of your tongue stuck to a pump handle or a flagpole someplace on planet Earth right now because you licked it when it was cold? Come on now, be honest. Put your hand up. Okay, there's several. All right.
That never happened to me, actually. I learned not to do that from other people who did. Also, I stuck my tongue to an ice cube once and couldn't get it off, so I knew enough.
Don't lick something 300 below 0. Trust me on that one. Okay, that'll be the last thing you lick for a while. If you throw a snowball too fast, it'll break apart. You couldn't possibly shoot a snowball out of a cannon. If you did, it would simply break apart in pieces before it even got out the end of the barrel.
I don't know about that exactly, but okay.
So a super cold ice meteor, if it were coming toward the Earth, would build up speed because of the inverse square law. As it got going faster and faster, it would break up out in space into a bazillion little ice crystals.
What a confusing... This is wrong on so many levels. What the fuck? All right, number one, asteroids are not snowballs. Snowballs are compacted ice that is in powder form. It's not molecularly joined. Asteroids are pieces of ice that are molecularly joined. They are rocky and metallic bodies, by the way. Also, asteroids are. Comets have significant ice content and could be called dirty snowballs, but they're not pure snow. Hovind is conflating two completely different types of objects. He did say asteroids, right? I thought he said asteroids. Maybe he meant comets, or maybe I mistakenly thought he said asteroids. The inverse square law doesn't work that way. The inverse square law describes how gravity or light intensity decreases with distance. Force equals G. Here, let me just copy and paste the formula. This is the formula right here. F equals G m1 m2 over r squared, which is the distance. That's the calculation. As an object gets closer to Earth, gravitational force increases, inverse square. But this doesn't mean asteroids speed up from being slow far away. Objects in space already have orbital velocities based on their trajectories. So here's the bottom line with it. It does not speed up the closer that it gets. That energy is pushed into its already existing orbital, basically. It's not like a magnet where they get sucked together in the same way like that. Doesn't work that way. Also, asteroids don't break up from speed alone. An object breaks up when tidal forces, differential gravity, or atmospheric friction exceed its structural integrity. This happens when it enters an atmosphere, friction heating. It passes within the Roche limit of a massive body, tidal forces, and not just from going too fast in the vacuum of space. And misconception number 4, ice does not survive atmospheric entry as snow. If an icy object entered Earth's atmosphere, friction would heat it to thousands of degrees. It would vaporize or sublimate into gas. It would not gently fall as snow, and we'd see a meteor or fireball, not snowflakes. Okay, let's continue.
Next thing you need to keep in mind, the Earth
Let's just step back a hair and keep listening here.
First square law, as it got going faster and faster, it would break up out in space into a bazillion little ice crystals. Those would then shower down on the Earth as super cold snow. Next thing you need to keep in mind, the Earth has a very strong magnetic field, but it's getting weaker. At the time of the flood, it was probably about 15 to 20 times stronger than it is today.
No. Absolute absurdity. No. The magnetic field, we can test and see what it is over different periods of time. Again, I talked about this in the previous one. His claim is that he's basically going backwards. Like 100 years ago, say, the magnetic field was at, 110%. It was 10% higher in strength than it is today, 100 years ago. So he's going backwards and saying, well, if 100 years ago is 10% stronger, then that means 1,000 years ago it must have been 100% stronger, right? That's not how this works. It's not how this has ever worked. It's complete nonsense. It goes up and down. It even flips from time to time. He just doesn't understand, or maybe he does understand and is intentionally, specifically lying to people. That's probably the more likely option. But okay, let's continue.
The magnetic field is weakening. The magnetic field would deflect super cold ice crystals to the poles, most of them. Also, super cold ice is easily statically charged. The northern lights are caused because of the Earth's magnetic field. How many have ever seen the northern lights?
Yep, northern light. That's true. Literally everything that he's saying here is completely made up. Like he's saying that I'm so confused. It's like I still don't understand how he came to the conclusion that ice crystals would float down to Earth from a comet that flew by. Like what?
Unbelievably gorgeous. If you've never seen them, it's worth just get up there. So I've seen them in South Dakota and up in Canada. Unbelievably beautiful. The northern lights are something worth seeing. Anyway, the pre-flood world was very different. The world probably had a canopy of ice or water above the atmosphere. We cover that on video 2. Now, there are some creationists, including Walt Brown, who disagree. They say there was no canopy. And I think...
Oh, canopy theory. I totally forgot about. Okay. Canopy theory. He believes that there was this massive ice canopy surrounding the Earth, and it came and fell to the ground or whatever during Noah's flood. Just the most absurd shit imaginable, dude.
The arguments they use can be easily answered, and I'll be glad to discuss that if you'd like more. Next thing to keep in mind, who on earth was Peleg? Genesis chapter 10, and I hate to say this about the Bible, so God, don't listen for just a minute, okay? But Genesis 10 is boring. Okay, as you read through that chapter, it's got all these big names that nobody on earth can pronounce except Alexander Scorby. So-and-so begot so-and-so, and he begot so-and-so, and he begot so-and-so. And you're reading through this long, boring chapter of everybody begotten everybody. And all of a sudden, you come across verse 25. And it says, unto Eber were born 2 sons. The name of the one was Peleg. For in his days was the earth divided. And his brother's name was Joktan. Well, now hold on a minute. Peleg is the only guy, it doesn't say anything about anybody else. Why does it say something about Peleg? It says in his days was the earth divided. And then it says his brother's name was Joktan. Nobody else gets their brother mentioned.
Okay.
Why would his brother be mentioned? Well, the word Joktan means shorten. Peleg means divided. Peleg was born about 100 years after the flood.
I'm sorry. I don't believe a word out of his fucking mouth.
Notice he only lived to be 239. His daddy and grandpa and great-grandpa lived into their 400s. What was different? What happened in the days of Peleg? Next thing you need to keep in mind, the pre-flood world had a canopy of water above and water under the crust of the earth.
I don't understand why he brought all that Peleg stuff up. I'm confused. How did that connect to literally anything at all?
Okay. Now, I made a decision years ago as a new Christian. I was 16 when I got saved, and all the atheists in my city started coming after me, trying to get me converted, away from Christianity.
Somebody says, is this Pokemon with guns? That sounds metal as fuck, actually. Pokemon with guns? Yes.
By the way, guys, check out my new shop, owenmorgan.com/shop. I have a bunch of really cool designs on there.
And I had some real problems believing some of the things in the Bible. They were showing me supposed contradictions and all that. We'll cover more on that in video 7. But I had to make a decision as a 16-year-old new Christian. I said, Lord, I'm going to believe your book until somebody can prove it's wrong.
Okay, well, it's been proven like 16 billion times over, so, you going to accept that or what?
Some of my friends decided they're going to doubt the Bible until it's proven right.
No, I certainly don't doubt the Bible until it's proven right. It's been proven wrong. Flat out, period. There are no ifs, ands, or buts about that.
I think that's a mistake. I think I made the right decision. I said, God, I'm going to believe you even for the things I don't understand. And he's proven himself on just about every one of them. There's a couple I still got questions about. There was an atheist one time came to the preacher and said, Preacher, I don't believe anything in the Bible. I only believe science. He said, Preacher, if you can prove one verse out of the Bible scientifically, I'll believe it. The preacher said, well, okay. He grabbed the atheist around the neck, grabbed his nose, and began twisting his nose. Pretty soon, of course, the blood is pouring down his face, and the atheist said, what on earth are you doing? He said, I'm proving the Bible. It says the wringing of the nose bringeth forth blood.
I don't
recommend.
I don't get it. I don't understand. The wringing of the nose bringeth forth blood. What does that have to do with anything? I'm so goddamn fucking confused right now.
You do that, unless you get a really hardcore atheist, then you might want to try that one. But I'm going to give you the Hovind theory. Now, this is supposed to be good teaching technique. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to tell you, and then I'm going to tell you, and then I'm going to tell you what I told you.
Now, that's not just good teaching technique. That's good writing technique. That's how you're supposed to write. Tell them what you're going to tell them. Tell them what you told them. Yeah.
You get all that? We're going to go through it very quickly. 8 simple steps of what I think caused the flood and explain all these strange phenomena on the planet. Then we'll go into them in a little bit more detail, and then we'll close this down. Noah and the animals got...
Wait a minute. So are you telling me we're just now, literally just now, getting into your stupid fucking Hovind theory? We're 43 minutes into this, and now you're going to teach us about your stupid theory? Okay.
Close this down. Noah and the animals got safely into the ark. A 300-degree below zero ice meteor came flying toward the earth and broke up...
You mean comet? Do you mean comet?
...in space. As it was breaking up, some of the fragments got caught and became the rings around the planets. They made the craters on the moon, the craters on some of the planets, and what was left over came down and splattered on top of the North and South Pole.
Okay. God damn. Okay, I'm sorry. Did he just say the North and South Pole have ice there because a comet, or I'm sorry, an ice meteor, my mistake, splattered onto them? A singular ice meteor? One more time, dude. I'm sorry. This is insane. I've never heard this before.
Below zero ice.
One more.
Try that one. But I'm going to give you the Hovind theory. Now, this is supposed to be good teaching technique. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to tell you, and then I'm going to tell you, and then I'm going to tell you what I told you. You get all that? We're going to go through it very quickly. 8 simple steps of what I think caused the flood and explain all these strange phenomena on the planet. Then we'll go into them in a little bit more detail, and then we'll close this down. Noah and the animals got safely into the ark. A 300-degree below zero ice meteor came flying toward the earth.
I believe that the limit is negative 270 degrees Celsius, if I'm not mistaken. That's Kelvin, right? That's 0 degrees Kelvin. And that is literally the lowest temperature that is possible on planet Earth or in space or literally anywhere, if I'm not mistaken. Somebody in the comments can correct me there. But okay, go on.
And broke up in space. As it was breaking up, some of the fragments got caught and became the rings around the planets. They made the craters on the moon, the craters on some of the planets, and what was left over came down and splattered on top of the North and South Pole. This super cold snow fell on the poles mostly, burying the mammoths standing up.
Okay.
The dump of ice on the North and South Pole cracked the crust of the Earth, releasing the fountains of the deep. The spreading ice caused the ice age effects, the glacier effects that we see. It buried the mammoths, made the Earth wobble around for a few thousand years, and it made the canopy collapse that used to protect the Earth. And
made the canopy collapse. There's your canopy theory. Oh my God, dude. This is straight up like this is like flat earth shit, what he's laying down right now. This is flat earth level of fucking insane.
Opened up the fountains of the deep. During the first few months of the flood, the dead animals would settle out and dead plants and get buried. They would become coal if they're plants and oil if they're animals. And those are still found today in huge graveyards. Fossils found in graveyards, oil found in big pockets under the ground. During the last few months of the flood, the unstable plates of the earth would shift around. Some places lift up, other places sink down. That's going to form ocean basins and mountain ranges. And the runoff would cause incredible erosion, like Grand Canyon, in a couple of weeks.
No, that's literally impossible.
Over the next few hundred years, the ice caps would slowly melt back, retreating to their current size. The added water from the ice melt would raise the ocean level, creating what's called a continental shelf. It would also absorb carbon dioxide.
I mean, we debunked every single one of these things every step of the way. So I don't even feel the need to debunk this again. Like, all of this is bullshit. Every one of these claims is bullshit and not possible at all.
Out of the atmosphere, which allows more radiation to get in, which is going to shorten people's lifespans. And in the days of Peleg, it finally took effect.
Oh, so he thinks that we don't live to 900 years old anymore because of radiation? We would see some kind of radiation poisoning, and we would be able to treat it if that were the case. We could live to 900 again if that were the case. It's not. It's nonsense.
The earth still today shows the effects of this devastating flood. Now, a little more detail on each one. God told Noah, Lord said to Noah, "Come thou." Did you catch that? Listen very carefully. What did God tell Noah to do? He told him to come into the ark. He didn't say go into the ark. He said come into the ark.
Okay.
Where does God have to be in order to say that? In the ark. That'll preach, brother. There's a sermon right there, just right there. Come into the ark, Noah. Come with me. We're going on a little cruise. Come on in. I'm here with you. And when the flood was over, God said to Noah, go out of the ark. God was with him the whole time. That would be quite the cruise.
I don't understand.
And the Lord shut the door. By the way, good eternal security verse. If the Lord's got you saved, you're saved, okay? You can't get out of God's hand. Then this 300-degree below zero ice meteor came flying through the solar system. Some of it broke apart. It made craters on Mercury and craters on the moon. 4 of the planets today still have rings around them. And the rings around these planets are made of rock and ice.
So how big do you think that this thing was? Because if it was too big, it would have disrupted the gravitational orbit or whatever of all of the planets all along the way. And they would have like flown off into nothingness.
Very interesting. Now, Walt Brown thinks some of the craters on the moon were formed when the fountains of the deep broke open and rocks went flying up out of Earth's gravitational pull, drifted around for a while and clobbered into the moon. He may be right on that. I don't know. But it's
okay. So he's saying that the gravitational pull of this ginormagantuan ice meteor, quote unquote, caused like things to bombard the moon. All right.
He thinks the comets came from Earth. And water on Mars came from Earth when the fountains of the deep broke open. You could read about it for yourself if you'd like.
That's absurd.
Super cold snow would land mostly around the poles because super cold ice is not only affected by the magnetic field, it's easily statically charged.
Okay. He says, hang on, let me just... Okay, a negative 300 degrees Fahrenheit ice meteor flew through space. This is the conspiracy. Broke apart near Earth, created planetary rings, made craters on the moon, fell mostly at Earth's poles due to magnetic attraction, cracked the Earth's crust, releasing underground water, triggered Noah's flood, buried mammoths, caused an ice age, made Earth wobble, collapsed a vapor canopy, formed the Grand Canyon in weeks, and created all fossils. Now, let's just break some of this apart. There are a couple specific things that I want to mention here. A negative 300 degrees Fahrenheit ice meteor is physically impossible. Temperature issue is space near Earth orbit averages around negative 455 Fahrenheit. Absolute zero is 459 Fahrenheit, negative 459 Fahrenheit. But temperature in space is weird. It's about radiation, not conventional temperature. An object in space doesn't have a single temperature. It depends on solar radiation exposure. Ice does not work this way. At negative 300, water ice would be extremely brittle, but it wouldn't behave like Hovind describes. More importantly, any ice object large enough to cause global effects would be gravitationally rounded like a comet or a dwarf planet. And it would have been detected astronomically, like people could see it, and it'd leave massive evidence. We have no evidence of this, like literally zero. The breaking up physics is backwards. Snowball analogy failure. Hovind says if you throw a snowball too fast, it breaks apart. Therefore, asteroids must speed up as they approach Earth. This is completely backwards. Objects in space travel at orbital velocities based on their trajectories and the gravity wells they're in. Asteroids approaching Earth are typically traveling 20 to 70 kilometers per second, or 45,000 to 156,000 miles an hour. They're not speeding up from some slow initial speed. They're already going incredibly fast. Gravity does accelerate them slightly as they approach, but they start fast. Regarding the structural failure, objects break up from atmospheric friction, heating, tidal forces, differential gravity, the Roche limit, not from going too fast in a vacuum. Magnetic field attraction is nonsense, which he's about to get to. Planetary rings from the same event is absurd. Hovind claims fragments created rings from Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. Here's why that's impossible. Saturn's rings are made of ice and rock particles, mostly water ice. Ring systems form from tidal disruption of moons or captured material within the Roche limit. By the way, regarding the Roche limit, it's the closest distance from the center of the planet that a satellite can approach without being pulled apart by the planet's gravitational field, if you were wondering what the Roche limit is. So, if you see like a moon orbiting a planet, it's not, or it's within, it hasn't reached the Roche limit yet, because the Roche limit, I believe, is where it will break apart. We'll continue on and hit more of his claims as we go, because he has a lot more in this conspiracy. Let's keep going.
Because super cold ice is not only affected by the magnetic field, it's affected by, it's easily statically charged. How many have seen the Van de Graaff generator where they make your hair stand up? You know, we've got one of those at our science center at Dinosaur Adventureland. As this ice meteor came flying toward the Earth, it broke apart. Pieces would settle in around the poles mostly, causing the Earth to wobble for a few hundred years, or maybe even a few thousand years. The canopy of water overhead collapsed and it rained 40 days. The water underneath the bottom, under the crust, came shooting to the surface, and the water kept going up for 150 days. And everybody drowned. It probably took 6 or 8 months to kill everybody during that flood. We all get the idea, well, it rained, everybody died first day. No, it took a long time for people to die. People would be running and fighting for higher ground as that got more and more rare as the water keeps coming up and up and up for 150 days.
Then why don't we see evidence of that? Why do we see fossils literally all over the place? And why don't we see dead bodies all piled up in the tallest locations on all of planet Earth? It is so easy to pull this to pieces. Literally none of this makes any sense at all. And in the next series, episode 7, question and answer, he answers some of the criticisms. I mean, the whole thing is insane. All of it is insane. But I would be willing to bet he doesn't address that one, for example. We'll see. We're going to hit that one too, so keep a lookout.
The water increased. By the way, they're still discovering chunks of ice flying around in space. Here's an
Yes, those are called comets.
article about a scientist who discovered chunks of ice as big as this auditorium are hitting the Earth all the time. They dissolve in space, but it rains down as water. There's water.
It does not rain down on Earth as water. What are you smoking?
Water everywhere in space. Science and Technology article here.
Entering the atmosphere would vaporize. It would sublime it. That's where a solid turns to a gas instantly. Like melting is where a solid turns to a liquid, and evaporating is where a liquid turns to a gas. Subliming is where a solid turns to a gas, and that's what it does when it enters the Earth's atmosphere. It sublimes. This is just illusion.